yucky, but also super exciting, which is college in a nutshell. I will have to get the hang of this again, but welcome, spring edition, to my podcast. Let me go on a tangent. If anyone ever watched What Happened Before, then you know the drill. I just want to get right into it because I have other stuff to do. Not to sound like a bitch, but yeah. So the movie I want to talk about today is called The Old Guard. It was released on Netflix in 2020, which, as you might know, wasn't a great year for a lot of things. But this movie was so good. I watched it when it came out. It was a delightful watch. It's apparently based on a graphic novel series of the same name, which is actually still going. I think the last installment is set to come out this year and next year, and it's like the end of the comic series. I might need to read it because the sequel to The Old Guard is actually also coming out this year. I think. So I'm excited for that. Not excited that Netflix kicked me out of my own path. Okay, so sidebar. Netflix sucks because all of a sudden we can't password share. That's so dumb. I don't need your household password whatever to watch Netflix properties, okay? Plead the fifth. But I digress. Yeah, so it was a great watch. Basically, the basic plot rundown is that there's a group of immortal mercenaries, which is a group of 5, and their names are, well, they're shortened names. They have long names because they were born like super old. So the shortened names that they use in the movie are Andy, which is played by Charlize Theron, which is also the only actor I will be name dropping because that's the only one I think that people were talking about when it came out. And also, I don't do celebrities' names. I don't do the actors' names when I do the character rundown because it takes too long and I don't know any of them. It means nothing to me. Okay, and the second one, if we were to look at this in like heist movie terms, is Booker, and he kind of is the information gatherer for whatever jobs they go on. Then it's Joe and Nikki, my favorite immortal. Well, I'm not gonna say favorite because I have many immortal husbands in many different franchises, but they're pretty cute. And then there's Quinn, who we don't know yet at the beginning of the film because she's sad. She makes me sad, but then she comes back. I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, that's the rundown. And then we have our new immortal called Nile. She's a Marine who dies in combat, comes back to life, and then she has to grapple with this new reality of hers, which sucks, which is basically these people randomly get super healing abilities, usually in battle because they're all warriors, and then they're functionally immortal until one day they're just not anymore. So their basic mission statement as a group is to do good and fight for what they believe in where they can. This movie is so great because it scratches that itch in my brain that wants super fluid and dynamic action scenes intercut with deep philosophical discussions about like life and what matters and how we affect one another. And it's like it's the perfect storm. The perfect balance of those two aspects. And it's like it's like it was made for me, if that makes sense. So in the actual film, we open and we start meeting our main characters. We open on Andy, and she's meeting Booker. We don't know their names, obviously, but they're meeting in, I cannot name the place. It's some type of Middle Eastern community where there's a bunch of tourism. I just watched the film and I swear I can't remember where it was, but they're meeting and they're meeting the entire group, and we learned that Andy has actually is coming back from a break because she is apparently just so run down. She's the oldest of the group, so she's like hundreds and hundreds of years old. old enough that she makes a comment later in the film where it's like they're talking about religion and she's like, I was once worshipped as a god. So that gives you a little bit of context for how old she is, where that like feasibly that's a thing that could happen, that kind of era. That's where she was alive. So she's so disheartened by all of the cruelty in the world, all the like war and starvation and, the world. And nothing that they are doing seems to be doing any good. So she's just so tired. So she's coming back from a break. And the reason that they all come together is because Booker has a new job. But the catch is that it's with someone that they've worked with before, a man named Copley who works for the CIA, who has a British accent for some reason. He explains why he was born in Boston, but then he was raised in London, and it's like, okay, you just wanted to have someone with an accent. It's funny to me, anyway. But working with someone that they've worked with previously is a no-no because if you spend too much time around someone and you're immortal and they're not, they're eventually going to catch on to the fact that, hey, something freaky deaky is happening here, and they're going to want to capture you. Like, it's that we have to get ET out of Earth or else he's going to be captured by the government type of deal. So you can imagine that they don't want to be captured ever, because if they are, that's just what is virtually eternity in a cage, which is a fate worse than death. So Andy is apprehensive about the idea, but she is convinced when Copley explains that the hostage situation that he's hiring these mercenaries for is a group of children who's getting ready to be human trafficked. And Andy, no matter how much of a hard ass she is, she's also a bleeding heart. So she's like, we'll send you the invoice when the job is done. And so we go off. We'll come back to them in a little bit. But then we cut over to Niall, who is in Afghanistan. She's a Marine. She doesn't know what's about to happen yet. She is also dealing with a hostage situation. The one she's dealing with is a little different, though. She's dealing with a bunch of women being used as sort of like a human barricade to hide this fugitive. And they find the fugitive, and even Niall shoots him, which neutralizes him, but he has a knife hidden up he's wanted alive. So unfortunately Niall has to go and try and save him after shooting him with her big ass gun. And then he slits her throat, which kills her. But then she comes back to life, which makes everyone on the military base go, that's weird. And she is given orders to vamoose, to wherever. And that's her situation. That's what she's dealing with. Highly traumatic, just a horrible situation to be in. We cut back to our original gang of mercenaries. It turns out Copley was lying to them. There were no hostages. There were no little girls in need of saving. They all get killed, and they come back to life on camera because it turns out Copley is working with some NEPA. I literally just watched the film. I cannot remember what this dude's name is. It literally does not matter what his name is, though, because you can just call him Elon Musk. Because he's a NEPO baby who just wants to make more money, a sadist, a narcissist, and, oh yeah, he works in Big Pharma. So he's trying to make a drug that elongates one's life, and he thinks that these immortal beings are the way to do it. He sucks. But Copley's intentions are, like, well-meaning, but, like, this gift isn't his to give, so he comes around. But right now, you're probably thinking, man, screw that guy. And I agree. Right now, he kind of sucks just a little bit. He does tell us that his wife died of ALS, which makes sense why he would want to give everything he has into trying to fix other people's lives. Because men will do anything other than going to therapy. Anyway, so basically the entire gang goes, we gotta find Copley and kill him, and then never do anything again. Andy is like, once we put a lid on this situation, do some damage control, I'm done. I'm over it. And they're like the group is sad, but like whatever. And then on the way there, they all get a vision of Niall dying, which is apparently how it works. They get dreams of each other until they meet each other in real life. Nikki thinks it's because it's destiny, because they're meant to be together, which is some hit me right in the found family spot. Some good shit. But so Andy goes to find Niall. They hate each other at the beginning. Well, Niall hates her situation and is pinning the blame onto Andy. Andy is just so tired. Niall stabs her and she's just like, please don't do that again. It's genuinely so jarring, amount of violence, and then also just hilarious comedy back to back. It's great. It's awesome. Then we get to the good stuff where we have the entire group all together. They're at a safe house in France, somewhere outside of France. And Niall gets to meet the rest of the immortals, which is fun because this is basically just exposition town where they tell stories and explain stuff to her, which by proxy is also explaining stuff to us. And it's just like, I'm not going to explain what I already explained or ruin good character interactions because you should go watch it. So get on that. Anyway, they get found out. Copley finds them in their safe house because the Nepo baby wants all of them in person so that his head scientist can like take blood samples and DNA and like find out why the hell they are the way they are. So they have to go kidnap them. So they shoot a grenade into the safe house. Booker is injured, but Nikki and Joe are taken, which sets up the climax of the film, which would be saving them and getting away from Elon Musk. I should stop saying that. I feel no one will see the light of day of this, but I feel like even saying his name will summon a league of lawyers to just take me for everything I'm worth. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, grenade. So only Niall, Andy, and Booker are left, and they have to go save Joe and Nikki. I want to like one scene that happens in between that is a scene where Andy has to go to like a local pharmacy and get stuff for her wound because she killed a bunch of guys because she's that girl. She's that girl. She's Andy. She can literally kill whoever she wants. She literally took out a small army by herself. And Booker puts it so beautifully. He says, that woman has forgotten more ways to kill than entire armies will ever learn. What a hard line, dude. Like, are you like that's when I say strong female character, that and also her depression. Okay? It's layers. It's layered. You either get it or you don't. But yeah, it turns out it's revealed to us that her immortality is kind of fading away, so that's why her wounds aren't closing as fast as she wants. That's why she has to go into town to get materials to bandage it. And the clerk at the store is like, do you need help? And she helps her with her little stab wound on her shoulder. And it's such a nice scene, which kind of encapsulates the entire themes of the movie and Andy's character arc. When Andy asks, you haven't asked why. Like, you haven't asked why I have this stab wound. And the clerk is like, it's not my business to ask. You need help. And she's like, we're not meant to be alone. And that's like the entire point. I love when scenes happen and you can point at it and be like, that's it. That's the point. That's the point of all of this. Because that is true. Because put a pin in that. I will come back to it. We're going through the plot linear. We are moving through the plot in a linear fashion. I need you to stick with me. Put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to it. So they go and they're right outside Copley's, not Copley, but like the place where their friends are being held and being experimented on, which is gnarly. The scenes of like, it's so gross. Like the head scientist, I think she's kind of a sadist too. Either that or like, I think there's kind of a joke or like a stereotype between scientists and doctors because they do a lot of like the same stuff, but only one of them has bedside manner. If you know what I'm talking about, I don't know how to put it into words, but it's like that. It's like, you don't have some compassion in you, bitch. Like, I think like it's so sadistic the way that they're doing it. That his head scientist is just kind of as gross as he is. Like two peas in a pod. In a gross, sadistic, money-hungry pod. But yeah, after we see some scenes of how they're being treated in captivity, not well, spoiler alert, we get a scene outside of the prison, basically, and Niall is having a bit of a crisis because she wants to go and see her family. And Andy's like, you know what? Take this gun. Just go. Just leave. You don't have to be part of this. Or if you want to be part of this, then you can wait until after. And she's like, great. But then there's like some trickery because Andy has a gun that Booker gave her out of the trunk of the car that they were driving. And when Niall leaves, Andy hands her the gun that Booker gave her and switches it with a different gun. And when Niall, away from where they parked outside of the compound, is like checking the gun, there's no bullets in the gun. And that's when we learn, oh my God, Booker is the mole. We learn that Booker is the entire reason that Copley found them in the first place and knows that they're immortal. Why would he do this? It's because he has this sad backstory of like his son, his youngest son in like, I can't even try and give you time periods, but it's old. I'm going to just say Renaissance era Italy, just to give you some context. So his youngest son died of stomach cancer, and at that point he was already immortal, so his son blamed him for not sharing his gift because yeah, it's really sad and like tragic, but you would probably react the same way, to be fair. If your dad was like immortal and not aging and not sick ever, or like his cuts magically healed, you'd probably too, if you were in like immense pain from your illness, would be like, give me some of that. And then of course you wouldn't believe him, which is kind of Booker's entire traumatic setup for his character arc, which is like, you can't fix everything, but this is him attempting to do so because he thinks that having them experimented on will like get the answer, and like there is no answer to be had, so he's really just doing this for nothing. And it's so bad. It's so bad. So they go in, but Booker immediately surrenders because he's on their side, and Andy is captured, and they realize when Andy is shot that she's not healing, and Booker is like, oh shit, this changes everything. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, dumbass. And it's just, now they're all captured and she might die. Because the people who have them don't care about their lives. They don't care whether they live or die, they just care whether or not they can use them. And it's bad. Niall comes in. It's so, I can't explain action scenes as well as the conversation scenes. It's just, she goes shooty stabby and then like saves them. That's a bad description for what is the awesome climax of this movie. I would say actually what the emotional climax of this movie is more learning how much Copley has researched them and their lives in history, and how much their like the ripple effect of the good actions has done for humanity. Because the way that he explains it is Andy saves someone from burning in a building, and then that person goes on to create the cure for syphilis or something. It's that kind of like, it's the butterfly effect. And because they are so old, they've done so much, it's created so much good for the world that they can't see because it's so gradual. Because they are still human, even though they're functionally immortal. And humans have a track record for not seeing what is happening as it's happening. They really only see A to B, but there's so much in between that is hard to see. It's harder to see from the inside. It's easier to see things as they are when you're on the outside looking in. And that's kind of the situation. So we're coming back to the scene that I was talking about, which is the point of the whole movie, which is we are not alone. We're not meant to be alone. And this is why. We are inherently social creatures, and this is the point. Sometimes I really, really like humans, and this is kind of why. Because we're not meant to be alone, and that's the entire point of everything. The point of what? The point of everything. Why would you do anything if this wasn't the point? I don't know if I'm making sense. I hope it's making some sense. But yeah, the end of the film is basically them getting out of the compound, Niall saving all of them. Niall also kills the big pharma Nepo baby, which is great. He does not deserve to live because he's probably a billionaire. Not going to say anything else on that matter. I'm going to move right on. And then the ending, kind of tail end of the film, is the group going, well, you betrayed us, Booker, so you are excommunicated from this group. So they're basically, and they are still immortal, so they're probably running into each other, but they basically go, okay, 100 years, I don't want to see your face. Basically. Which is really sad for them because they don't want, like, they're the only family that they have, and this hurts to do. But man, like, he screwed up so big, you can't not punish it. So they're like 100 years, and then you can come back. But it sucks because Andy probably will be dead by then. Because, like I said, it's implied that she's losing her immortality. So who knows if she actually will live that long, or if she's like will age normally now. And it sucks, and you can see that everyone thinks that it sucks, and it's just bad. And, you know, happy ending, happy-ish ending. Yeah, I got nothing else. It's sad. But then we get, Andy has it's a nice little button for her character arc, which is like, now all that's left to do is live. And it's like, what else can you do? So she's going to try and enjoy what she can with what friends she has by her side, including Niall, who comes to the conclusion that it's more merciful to just let her family think that she was killed in Afghanistan and not missing in action. Because, you know the risk when someone you love goes overseas, and it sucks, but it's part of it. And we get a little mid-credit scene, where we see Booker like a couple months into his exile, and he is just a mess. Like, he is downing whiskey like it's water. He is in a bad way. And then he stumbles into his apartment that he's living in, which is bad. And we see Quinn waiting for him. Remember, I said Quinn was another character? I haven't talked about her at all. She was basically Andy's wife, and they were captured in the Salem witch trials and they were accused of witchcraft because they were freeing the quote-unquote witches. Duh. And they were captured, and then they were set to be executed, and when they didn't die, it kind of proved the casters, priests, I don't know, who cares? It proved their point that they were witches, so they kept trying to kill them over and over and over again, which, as you can imagine, didn't go well. And then we finally come to the realization that Andy and Quinn were supposed to be burned at the stake, but then they are separated instead. So Andy gets burned, and then Quinn is put in an Iron Maiden. And if you don't know what an Iron Maiden is, it's basically a Dracula coffin with eye and mouth holes, which is horrifying to look at. And it's even more horrifying when you know what it's for. A person set to be execution will be placed in the Iron Maiden. It's basically just a cylindrical iron coffin, and it is wrapped up with chains and locked up real tight, and then it's thrown into the ocean so that you drown. But if you've been paying attention, you know that Quinn can't drown. So she's basically just spent 500 years drowning, dying, being resurrected, and doing it over again with no rest. For 500 years, this has been true. And all of a sudden, in the mid-credit scene, Quinn shows up at Booker's apartment, and this obviously is setting up for the sequel, which I am so excited for. I want it to happen now. It's gonna be so good. I don't even care what it is. If it has even half of the ambiance and aesthetic and style that the first film had, I will be happy. I'm just so excited. You should be too. That's pretty much all the plot. And then the themes. I really love... Oh, something that occurred to me while watching this film. In the portion of the film where Niall has her dying, coming back to life moment, she is attempted to be saved in the moment by one of her friends named Dizzy. Weird name. Obviously, it's a nickname, but also why? Why is, I guess, my question. But Dizzy tries to save her, and she dies while trying to save her. And then she's like, there's not even a scar, because they heal super fast. There's no scars. There's not even a scar there where I was holding her neck together in my hands, and she's like so like terrified out of her mind. And you know, it makes sense why the higher ups are like, we need to send E.T. off to the Area 51 to see what the hell is going on with her. But it doesn't make sense to me why her friends, her sisters in arms, in combat, her comrades in arms is like not exuberantly happy that she's still alive. They're acting like they're pirates in the golden age of piracy, and it's like they're super superstitious. Maybe Marines are superstitious. I think being in war would have that effect on your brain where you just believe in nonsense. Because what else is there to believe when reality is also nonsense? That feels like a bigger conversation that I'm not prepared to handle or equipped to handle in any way. But I was just like, if my best friend died in my arms and then came back to life the next day, you wouldn't see me questioning shit. I'd be like, awesome. I don't know what God did it, but thank you. And then I'd move on. In what universe would you have a miracle happen and just be like, that's fucking weird, don't talk to her anymore? I'm like, were you friends before? I don't know. Maybe that's a me thing. I did not like it, but it's fine. But yeah, that's The Old Guard, released 2020. What a bad year for everything else, but what a great year for this movie to come out, for me, personally. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Pacific Tiger Broadcasting, and I will see you next time, where we're going to talk about Jaws, and it's going to be my first multiple people podcast episode. Be excited. Okay, bye!